Please wear headphones. Go on. Pause the video. Go get your headphones. Sounds of Frederick Douglass. Lessons from the GOAT. Part 1. Hi guys, it's Jasmine, and I have been wanting to make a video on excerpts and quotes from one of the GOATs, and that is Frederick Douglass. If you already know who Frederick Douglass is and you want to skip the brief bio that I'm about to give of him, you can go ahead and skip to this timestamp, which is also provided in the description below for your convenience. If you don't already know who Frederick Douglass is, our schools have failed us. Just kidding. Frederick Douglass was born in Maryland in 1818 to the barbaric system of slavery, but that didn't stop him from teaching himself how to read and write and eventually escape slavery. And if that's not a remarkable journey in itself, he went on to become a renowned abolitionist, a famous writer, orator, diplomat, journalist, who not only fought for the freedom of enslaved people, but was also a hardcore feminist. Fun facts, he liked to play the violin, and he was also into photography. So it's no surprise that he was the most photographed person of the 19th century. This was before selfies and iPhones were a thing. Your random neighbor might be the most photographed person of the 21st century, but we'll never truly know, will we? He was the man. If I haven't already made my case for why we should take a lesson or two from Frederick Douglass, let me put it this way. He went from being physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all the above abused, to being appointed ambassador to the Republic of Haiti by U.S. President Benjamin Harrison's administration. And if that's not impressive, Okay, quick note. I inserted this section as a way to help paint the impressive journey of Frederick's position in society, that he went from being tortured as a slave to being appointed in high-ranking U.S. government positions, which also include but are not limited to being a recruiter for the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, the 1st Regiment of African American soldiers, helping to recruit about 180,000 African Americans to serve in the Civil War in the Union Army. He was also the Equal Rights Party nominee for Vice President of the United States in 1872. He became president of the Troubled Freedmen's Savings and Trust Company Bank in 1874. He was also appointed as the U.S. Marshal of the District of Columbia by President Hayes. I want to be clear that I don't believe that any of these titles makes for his most significant accomplishment in history. If you watch part 3 of this series, we'll actually cover some of the fraud in what appeared to be shady opportunities, where Frederick was often working in institutions that were entrenched in racism and or working with people whose intentions fell short of being honest or pure. His legacy extends far beyond any of these flashy titles, and I just wanted to be clear about that. No, what will be? A lot of people like to say that behind Abraham Lincoln, there was Frederick Douglass. And I would like to continue that thought and say that behind the Emancipation Proclamation, there was a "What to the slave is the 4th of July." Now that I got that off my chest, I will be highlighting some lessons that we can take away from his writing when it comes to themes of unveiling deceit, that is dealing with shady people or shady circumstances, gratitude, that's giving thanks, and also work or the hustle, and overall what it means to be self-made. This is part 1 of a series of videos that I will be making, and I thought it would be a great idea to maybe get this content to people who might find inspiration in it or might find motivation in it, but also to kind of help reflect and keep myself accountable as far as like these lessons, because I'm not too sure that I abide by them second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, week by week, etc. And I just think that putting it down in a format like this will just like help keep myself accountable. So yeah, it's always nice to have a disclaimer for everything. The first special theme of lessons will be on gratitude. Through Frederick Douglass's life's work, we can see that we all have the means by which we can succeed. And to be truly grateful is to acknowledge that most of us have some kind of opportunity to expand or to grow and to eventually meet our goals. And that's to say that you don't have to have $1 million to start your own business. You don't have to attend a well-recognized university to be a scholar. You don't have to attend any university to be knowledgeable in your field of study. You don't have to have a multi-million-dollar studio to create beautiful music. etc. If you have the means by which you can prove your abilities or assert your abilities, you should use those means to achieve your goals, no matter how small or insignificant you think that these means might be to you or to anybody else. This is one of the principles of being self-made that Frederick Douglass covers in his Self-Made Men speech. Quote, "It is surprising with what small means in the field of earnest effort great results have been achieved. That neither costly apparatus nor packed libraries are necessarily required by the earnest student in self-culture." End quote. This self-culture that Douglass speaks about is having the willingness and the determination to improve ourselves starting from where we are. Douglass was a living testament of this idea. He used every chance he had to develop his own literacy when a formal education was denied to him on account of his skin color. Quote, "The plan which I adopted and the one by which I was most successful was that of making friends of all the little white boys whom I met in the street. As many of these as I could, I converted into teachers. With their kindly aid, obtained at different times and in different places, I finally succeeded in learning to read." End quote. And he didn't stop there. When he found himself working at a shipyard, he began to practice how to write and took the little knowledge that he had obtained there and continued to strategically invite the neighborhood kids to teach him how to write, or how to write even more. Quote, "When I met with any boy who I knew could write, I would tell him I could write as well as he. In this way, I got a good many lessons in writing, which it is quite possible I should never have gotten in any other way. During this time, my copybook was the board fence, brick wall, and pavement. My pen and ink was a lump of chalk. With these, I learned mainly how to write. I then commenced and continued copying the italics in Webster's spelling book until I could make them all without looking on the book." End quote. When we are grateful for what we do have, we are more likely to see our circumstances as tools and then recognize that these tools are at our disposal, and we can begin to ask ourselves, what influence do I have on the world around me? We can make a difference where we already exist. And eventually, the ultimate embodiment of gratitude is behaving in ways that show our appreciation and even return the support or generosity that we've received. Quote, "There is room and work for all, for the weak as well as the strong. Activity is the law for all, and its rewards are open to all." End quote. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, oh, if I had this amount of time, I would do this for my loved ones, or if I had this amount of money, I would do this for my loved ones, instead of thinking, what can I do today, right now, to show that I love and appreciate the people around me? Douglass believed that while happiness is a subjective experience, quote, "Family and neighborhood well-being stand near to us all and are full of lofty inspirations to earnest endeavor, if we would but respond to their influence." End quote. This is something that Douglass exemplified as he held secret gatherings where he would teach his fellow slaves how to read the New Testament. I mean, he wasn't happy being a slave, but still he found solace in being able to teach his fellow slaves how to read. Quote, "They were great days to my soul. The work of instructing my dear fellow slaves was the sweetest engagement with which I was ever blessed. We loved each other, and to leave them at the close of the Sabbath was a severe cross indeed. I taught them because it was the delight of my soul to be doing something that looked like bettering the condition of my race. I kept up my school nearly the whole year I left with Mr. Freeland, and besides my Sabbath school, I devoted 3 evenings in the week during the winter to teaching the slaves at home. And I have the happiest to know that several of those who came to Sabbath school learned how to read, and that one, at least, is now free through my agency." Once again, you don't have to have a glamorous title. You don't have to have a glamorous salary to make a difference where you already exist. And sometimes it takes a bit of humility to understand that. Sometimes the people that make the biggest difference to our lives don't come from glamorous backgrounds either, and we should show our appreciation to them as well. One of my favorite excerpts from his Self-Made Men speech is, quote, "We ask not for his lineage, we ask not for his name. If manliness be in his heart, he noble birth may claim. We ask not from what land he came, nor where his youth was nursed. If pure the stream, it matters not the spot from whence it burst." End quote. He's so good. He's so good. So good. So we should be thankful for those who support us, and for our circumstances, right? So much easier said than done. And Frederick Douglass understood this. He even contemplated suicide when he was rented out to Edward Covey, who was AKA the slave breaker. Eventually, Edward Covey did break Douglass's spirit, and in his autobiographies, you can actually read how sad his mourning to God is when he's expressing his agony, being, in captivity. But in the midst of that, Frederick still found a way to make himself hopeful again. Quote, "I was sometimes prompted to take my life and that of Covey, but was prevented by a combination of hope and fear. It may be that misery and slavery will only increase my happiness when I get free. There is a better day coming." If you really need some agony to resonate with, you can go ahead and look at that. His expression to God is so sad, and I didn't want to read it. So sometimes we have to pivot and interrupt our mourning and shift how we perceive our pain, even if it's with the idea that it might increase our pleasure later. And for Frederick Douglass, a better day did come. Quote, "You have seen how a man was made a slave. You shall see how a slave was made a man." End quote. If you don't already know, spoiler alert, Douglass beats the out of Edward Covey. And he details the aftermath of this event. Quote, "It was a glorious resurrection. From the tomb of slavery to the heaven of freedom, my long-crushed spirit rose. Cowardice departed, bold defiance took its place, and I now resolved that, however long I might remain a slave in form, the day had passed forever when I could be a slave in fact. I did not hesitate to let it be known of me that the white man who expected to succeed in whipping must also succeed in killing me. From this time, I was never again what might be called fairly whipped. Though I remained a slave for years afterwards, I had several fights, but was never whipped." End quote. In the spirit of gratitude, Douglass felt that we owed thanks to our enemies as well for putting us on a stretcher. Talk about counting your blessings. Frederick Douglass felt that we needed to give thanks not just to the people that we love and admire, but also our adversaries. There is a lot of good amongst the bad. Douglass shared this optimism in his second revision of his autobiography, when he recalls his life and describes what his experience was as a human rights activist who would agitate. Quote, "I have neither been miserable because of the ill feeling of those about me, nor indifferent to popular approval. And I think upon the whole, I have passed a tolerably cheerful and even joyful life. I have never felt myself isolated since I entered the field to plead the cause of the slave and demand equal rights for all. In every town and city where it has been my lot to speak, there have been raised up for me friends of both colors to cheer and strengthen me in my work. I have always felt, too, that I had on my side all the invisible forces of the moral government of the universe. Happily for me, I have had the wit to distinguish between what is merely artificial and transient and what is fundamental and permanent, and resting on the latter, I could cheerfully encounter the former. How do you feel, said a friend to me, when you are hooted and jeered on the street on account of your color? I feel as if an ass had kicked, but had hit nobody, was my answer." End quote. Although we might be tempted by adversaries, we should not undermine those who do support us. It's easy to succumb to the gloomy energy brought about our adversity, but sometimes the mere existence of our struggles is an indication that we are on the right path. Quote, "For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake." End quote. Douglass teaches us that our enemies leave room for improvement and hence progress. Quote, "From practical benefit, we are often as much indebted to our enemies as to our friends, as much to the men who hiss as to those who applaud. For it may be with men, as someone has said about tea, that if you wish to get its strength, you must put it into hot water." Criticism took Theodore Parker from a village pulpit and gave him a whole country for a platform and the whole nation for an audience. England laughed at American authorship, and we sent her Emerson and Uncle Tom's Cabin. From its destitution of trees, Scotland was once a byword, and now it's a garden of beauty. 5 generations ago, Britain was ashamed to write books in her own tongue. Now her language is spoken in all quarters of the globe. The Jim Crow minstrels have in many cases led the Negro to the study of music, while the Tao cast upon the Negro's tongue has sent him to the lexicon and grammar and to the study of Greek orators and orations." End quote. In being grateful for our adversaries, we understand that nature is divine, and we trust that there is a universal tendency that pushes something that is unjust, hurtful, and disgusting into a flow of things that are right, healing, and easy to digest. Quote, "In learning to read, I owe almost as much to the bitter opposition of my master as to the kindly aid of my mistress. I acknowledge the benefit of both." End quote. If you don't already know, Douglass asked his mistress to teach him how to read, and this is actually how he began his education. But that soon ended after his master learned about this and warned to his wife that if Douglass learned to read, it would forever unfit him to be a slave. But as Douglass mentions, it was too late. Quote, "What he most loved, that I most hated. That which to him was a great evil to be carefully shunned was to me a great good, to be diligently sought. And the argument which he so warmly urged against my learning to read only served to inspire me with a desire and determination to learn." End quote. Ironically, this moment became the beginning of Frederick's journey of enlightenment. I'll end with this quote. "I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than to be false and incur my own abhorrence. From my earliest recollection, I date the entertainment of a deep conviction that slavery would not always be able to hold me with its foul embrace, and in the darkest hours of my career in slavery, this living word of faith and spirit of hope departed not from me, but remained like ministering angels to cheer me through the gloom. This good spirit was from God, and to him I offer thanksgiving and praise." End quote. You don't have to subscribe to any one specific or any religion at all to understand that being grateful is practical, and we should count our blessings even when they are in the form of adversary, in the form of a wretched condition, or in the support of a special few, or in the support of someone with a humble background. In the end, our ability to be thankful for what we have, who we have, and how we have it is a gateway for unlocking our limitlessness. If you sat through this video, thank you. You're awesome. Thank you. I would highly appreciate it if you shared this video. Before I let you go, I wanted to mention that I am having a raffle. If you owe anybody a gift, here's what I will do for you. If you comment down below and you like this video, you don't need to subscribe to the channel. If you just simply like the video and you comment on the video, tell me what your favorite lesson was. If you have any suggestions, if you have like a quote that relates to the video, whatever it may be, just engage with me and hashtag gratitude in your comments. I will go ahead and put you into a raffle to get this gift. And so what it will be is a gift that I will send to anybody who you would want me to send it to on your behalf. So I will be taking care of that gift for you. And what will be in this gift box, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. It will have 1967 vintage authentic Frederick Douglass stamps. It will also have a collection of his works in there and a t-shirt, Frederick Douglass t-shirt, and a poster. So if you are interested in that, please engage. It's a Frederick Douglass themed video. It's a Frederick Douglass themed raffle. Box of goods. I'm not good at dancing. Every 30 people that comment, I will go ahead and send out a gift. And if you comment once and then another 30 people comment, and I'll re-enter you into that raffle. If that makes sense. It must in truth be said, though it may not accord well with self-conscious individuality and self-conceit, that no possible native force of character and no depth of wealth and originality can lift a man into absolute independence of his fellow men. And no generation of men can be independent of the preceding generation. The brotherhood and interdependence of mankind are guarded and defended at all points. I believe in individuality, but individuals are to the mass like waves to the ocean. The highest order of genius is as dependent as is the lowest. Thank you.